Well, of course, when we talk about children and their media usage, of course, children use media like children use media in all developed countries, mostly for fun. So they watch TV and play digital games and read comics and so on. But in Finland we have lots of possibilities for children to learn about media and to express themselves through media. Kavi is a Finnish state authority, National Audiovisual Institute, and we are subordinate to the Ministry of Education and Culture, and one of our legal tasks is to promote media education, media skills and safer media environment for children. Of course, we have several different ways of doing this. For example, we do lots of cooperation with other organizations within the field. We promote research, and we do a lot of awareness raising, and we are teaching the educators, for example, teachers and librarians or early childhood educators. And we coordinate two major campaigns in Finland. The biggest one is Media Literacy Week, which brings together 50 different organizations, governmental organizations, NGOs, and also private corporations, to make resources which are free for all schools and kindergartens and libraries to use during Media Literacy Week, but also during the whole year. And we also promote media literacy and media education in general and contribute to policy development. For example, currently we have an obligation and mandate from the Minister of Culture to revise Finnish media literacy policy, and that's what we are doing now in cooperation with other organizations in the sector. And talking about the other major media literacy campaign, we also coordinate Game Week, which is a game education initiative, and we are coordinating it, but our cooperating organizations are organizing gaming and game education events in all parts of Finland. So this is what we do in practice, but we also take a lot of part in international discussion, especially in EU, but also in cooperation with UNESCO, for example. Not quite. The first Finnish media literacy policy guidelines were drawn in 2013. But media culture changes so fast, and people's way of using media changes very fast, and that's why we need also to revise the policy guidelines. But also because we want to include new target groups. The biggest flaw of the previous guidelines was that it was media literacy guidelines for children and young people. So it was basically for minors and under the age of 18. So now we also want to include adults and all citizens within the realm of the media literacy policy. It needs to be understood that in Finland, schools and teachers have a lot of professional autonomy. So the governmental organization, National Education Agency, is responsible for drawing guidelines for curriculum. Not only for schools, but also for kindergartens and preschools. And all Finnish curriculum guidelines from early childhood education to upper secondary education include also media literacy and digital competencies. What is actually done is that we have these national guidelines, then municipalities can localize them a bit to answer to their needs. And then individual schools can also localize them a bit to fit to the needs of the school. And after all, it's of course the teachers who are carrying out the media education. So we are relying heavily on a professionalism of Finnish teachers who are very highly educated. But how is media education included in curriculum? It's not a separate subject, but it is part of transversal competence area called multiliteracy. And multiliteracy is based on broad understanding of text. So reading and writing doesn't mean only that we understand the letters and can write them, but we also need to understand audiovisual material, images, different kind of symbols, and so on. And this transversal competence area of multiliteracy is supposed to be promoted throughout all education, which means that within all subjects. But that's not all. Media issues, media literacy issues are also discussed under specific subjects. For example, in Finnish literacy and language, critical media literacy and source criticism is discussed more. And for example, visual literacy and reading images is discussed more in arts. It is a good question, and you are very much to the point, because it is a very wide thing. We all know that we get information from so many sources, for example, newspapers, books, comics, infographics, videos, films, and so on. And how I'm introducing it to teachers when I'm conducting, for example, in-service training for teachers, I start by making them think how media is intertwined in our lives, not only in working and studying, but also in our everyday lives. For example, when I ask that how many of you today woke up in an alarm clock that is actually your smartphone, it's almost everyone who says that the first thing they grab in the morning is probably a smartphone. It can be also the last thing because they set the alarm clock again and go to sleep. When I talk to teachers who are teaching children and young people, or why not adults, when they start thinking about their everyday life and studying and working and influencing in society, it's pretty much self-evident that it's all intertwined with media. And that is what makes it so important, that we understand what it's all about, that we can use it for fun, of course, but also for expressing our own ideas, for using it responsibly, and for contributing to society. Actually, many of the target groups can be reached in the same ways that young people have been reached. Well, if I start with libraries, we have a huge, very well operating public library network in Finland, and Finns are very active library users. So libraries have done a great work, also, of course, with young people and children, but with adults also. They're very active in teaching and guiding them in everyday practices, like how do you use email, or how do you use tablet computer, and so on. But also they have done workshops and guidance with critical media literacy. And for example, if we provide some free awareness raising material, they are very often eager to disseminate those to adults. So libraries are a very important point. Then, just like with children, we have also lots of community colleges and other places for adults, of course also for young people, but also for adults to learn. So they can have separate courses about media skills. They are most often operational media skills. For example, how to take better pictures, or how to film your own movie, but sometimes also critical media literacy. So these free or almost free with very reasonable admission fee courses and possibilities to attend are very important. And then, of course, we have also a basic education curriculum for adults, for those adults who are, for example, immigrants with no previous education, or they may be previous school dropouts who didn't complete their basic education when they were young. And media literacy and media education is also included in a basic education curriculum for adults. And then we have organizations like our national broadcasting operator Yle. which offers lots of free teaching and learning materials, both for children and young people, but also for adults. So there's lots of free access material online, so adults can also learn by themselves. And for example, if you look at the materials I provided you, we have the populism bingo. It's targeted to adults when they are watching political debates. They are able to read analyze the discourses used in debates by if you turn it around, there is this bingo sheet. So you can tick the box if you find elements of populism in the speech. And of course, this is just a game, so it's not some kind of serious analysis tool that you can say who's populist and who's not. But this is a funny and gameful way to discuss with your friends when you are listening to what politicians promise you, that do we think that this is populism or not. And when it comes to adults, I must say that we also have active associations who are promoting media literacy skills among seniors especially. In Finland, in media education, we have this great situation that we have so many active civil society organizations which are promoting media literacy in all sectors and all target groups. Well, there are too many places and organizations to name them all, and of course I also need to highlight this, that probably most of media literacy education is carried out in everyday work of schools, kindergartens, libraries, youth houses and so on. And also it is very hard to say how many young people attend media literacy activities after school, because we have, again, so many organizations, at least 100 organizations in Finland that are arranging something related to media education. But I can give you some examples of different kind of projects that are meant for children and young people. For example, here in Kavi, we participated in a larger project called Art Testers, which was targeted to youngsters who are 14 or 15 years old. And Kavi's part of these art testers included film screenings, learning materials about the film, and then a review platform in which the young people commented on the film they saw. And we had more than 5,000 young people attending this kind of project during years 2017-2018. So this is an example of project that reaches a lot of young people, but mostly only once. If I give you another example from public sector, they have a thing called Youth Voice Editorial Board. And this kind of news and journalism making activity involves only like 40 young people every year, but they are very committed, they meet regularly, so it means that they are aiming to produce some good quality journalism, and they also publish with established Finnish news agents. So it's totally different kind of course, more deep learning if you attend every week or so. Yes, we have lots of variety here, and it also needs to be understood that we have some organizations in Finland that focus entirely on media education, but then we have lots and lots of organizations who mostly focus on something else, for example, youth work in general, but media education is one of their many activities. It's mostly voluntary basis, so we are not telling anyone what to do. So we trust that the organizations, that they have good knowledge about their own field they are working with, and they know their audiences and their own stakeholders. And how we are coordinating these actions, we have, well, for example, we have this Media Literacy Week, and there we have like 50 different organizations, and it can the participating organizations can vary from Facebook to NGO with 2 people working there, so it's a huge variety. Every year when we start preparing for the Media Literacy Week, we have this kind of kick-off meeting for potential cooperation organizations, so we are inviting everyone, and they can join, and they can tell us if they would like to be a part of Media Literacy Week. And if they want to be part of Media Literacy Week, they can choose the way they want to participate. For example, they can make their own campaign, but brand it under the label of Media Literacy Week. Or they can join us in making new resources, new campaigns. And that's why we are like bringing everyone together, but they can do their own thing, which they know the best. And we also arrange every year Finnish Media Education Forum, which is a meeting place for media education professionals. And there we discuss important issues in promoting media education. And we also have this kind of activity we call speed dating. So they can kind of pitch their own ideas if they are, for example, looking for new cooperating organizations. So they can have this 5-minute pitch and discuss a little bit with each other and make people aware of what they are doing. It's fair to say that it's mandatory for education providers to carry out media education, and not actually just in elementary school, but also in preschool and in kindergartens. So it's basically mandatory for education providers since the children are born. It is written in the curriculum, for example, that children need to have possibilities to develop digital skills, or studying need to happen both in traditional way and also in digital environments. And in some subjects there are some content areas that are said to be discussed. That, for example, safe and responsible use of ICT, for example, is stated in curriculum. I think the meaningfulness comes from the everyday life. So our world is full of different texts, and it's a kind of a life skill, multiliteracy, that you are able to understand and evaluate different texts and different contexts. And in multiliteracy, also, the question of cultural diversity is important, because when we are discussing things like interpreting images, for example, interpreting facial expressions, it can actually divide from culture to culture. How do we are interpreting these things? How do we understand them? So it is very important that we understand that we are getting knowledge from several different sources, not just from books or from newspapers, but for example, when people are watching this record of my interview, people probably are actually reading from the image that I am some kind of specialist because I'm dressed like this, and they understand that this is a specialist talking about special issue, because they are reading not just the film, but also my visual expression. And this kind of reading, if it's only implicit and it's not said out loud, that we have different kinds of ways of receiving information, it's not that easy to be aware different kinds of messages you get and how you are influenced, for example, through media. And that's why it's so important that we understand all the different ways of expressing ourselves, but also understanding and analyzing the messages we are getting. I think to summarize, I could say that in a world full of media, media literacy is a key competence for having a good free time, being able to work in ever-changing working environments, be able to study, and also be able to influence in society, because social media is getting more and more important in getting your voice heard in society. But I must also underline that being literate is only a sub-goal, because in life there are more important things than being literate in general. And it is a bigger issue of promoting peace and democracy in society, and it's also an issue of economy in terms of working skills. But in the end, it's a question of overall education and how to live a satisfying and happy life in 21st century.